former Edmonton Oiler, current Sportsnet analyst, current host of the Mitts Off podcast, Luke Gazdic, joins us on the show as he does on the first Tuesday of every month. And Gaz, it's deadline week for the Oil. Are you fired up for the next couple days of trade activity?
Yeah, man, this is a fun week. We're getting geared up at Sportsnet. I'm working the deadline on Friday, so hopefully we still have some things to talk about on Friday. I don't want to be, it's my first time doing something like this. So I just know generally the networks, you sit there for like 4 hours waiting to break trades. So hopefully we have some stuff to talk about Friday, but it's an exciting week, not only for the Oilers, but for the league. I'm just very, very curious and genuinely excited to see, you know, what Jeff Jackson and Ken Holland have in mind here. There's a couple teams around the league, but for my money, Edmonton might be the one that I think a lot of people, including myself, ourselves, have our eyes on the most.
Yeah, we've heard a lot about what the Oilers could be potentially looking to do. I know Ken Holland came out over the weekend and said he's not involved in the goaltending market at all. He likes his set of goalies. He likes the organizational depth, but I mean, chatter that they were in on Chris Tanev, that would lead you to believe they're still looking at an upgrade on the blue line. There's been plenty of talk about a third line center, a lot of talk about a top six scoring right winger. Which one of those options should be the biggest priority for Holland and the Oilers?
Yeah, for my money, it's probably up front. I know there's a lot of chatter about what's going on the blue line. I continually keep going back to the point that, Ty, I know you and me have talked about is what you're going to get, not only what you're going to get in return, but what you're going to have to give up. And the situation they had last year with Tice Barry. And I just remember thinking, like, these guys are such a big part of the team. By this point in the year, these guys are Edmonton Oilers, man. Like, there are a couple guys on the team that if you want to make a deal, it's money in, money out. And I think a lot about the chemistry you have in a locker room by this point in the year, and you're getting into the dog days and you're grinding and battling with your teammates. And there's a couple guys that you are kind of listing as casualties that are probably going to have to go the other way. You can read between the lines, whether it's a Brett Kulak or a Cody Ceci that's going to have to move if you bring in someone. I just hope that the return is absolutely more substantial than what you're going to have to give up, because you're sacrificing a pretty good teammate going the other way. I think obviously the one that would look really nice is a top six right winger that could probably skate and score goals. But I think a guy in the middle of the ice, someone, I understand this is a lot of wishes on the list, but someone that can play center and the wing, someone that has term, and someone that's a little grittier, a little more physical. I don't know what their plan with him is, but the name I keep coming back to is a guy like Scott Laughton in Philly, who I've loved for a long time. A guy that you can now move McLeod back to the wing, who I think plays a lot better at the wing than the center position, especially when we move into the playoffs here. Nothing against Ryan. Playing center ice in the National Hockey League is a really tough position. And the longer we go, the harder the games are going to get, the tighter they're going to get. And I think that third line, I mean, if you slot a guy like Laughton in the middle, move McLeod to the wing, keep Perry on the right side if you want, like that now looks like a completely different third line for me. But it's an exciting week, but I don't want to say it's also a sad week, just because I kind of put myself in that position as times as a former player where you know that there's an integral part of your locker room that's gotten you there that is going out now. And I just hope that their plans of bringing someone in are substantially better than what they have now.
Yeah, and I mean, the nice part about them for once not being in LTIR space is they've accumulated a little bit of cap space. So if you use the third-party broker system, like maybe you can get guys in without sacrificing. But I mean, you've been in plenty of NHL locker rooms, Luke. Like the idea of them having to move on from a guy like Cody Ceci, who's been here for 2.5 years, who's really well liked in the room. And I mean, even a guy like Warren Foegele, I know Frank's brought him up as a potential cap casualty. Foegele maybe more so than Ceci. The idea of moving him before a playoff run, just it doesn't quite sit right with me, because he's actually been decent this year too. And I don't know if moving him out just to go get whoever it might be, Nick Dowd's not a great example, but even like an Adam Henrique, like the assets and then also losing a piece off your roster, I don't know if that's something they can do. Like, they need more depth, not less, is kind of the point of what I'm saying here. And just adding a piece and then subtracting Foegele, that's not going to help you slot guys down in your lineup and give you a more productive third line or a more productive fourth line.
No, I agree with that too. And I do think you're right. They've accumulated some money, and what they can do. This is why GMs get paid. I don't know how much they actually make, but why they get paid the big bucks. Like, this is where good GMs become great GMs in this week, this season, this month, whatever you want to call it, around the trade deadline. This is where you're earning your money. And I think it's a really good opportunity to do, a little bit of juggling here and kind of, figure out what we can make work. I think this has been a really good opportunity for Chris Knobloch to, like, I haven't loved the way the lines have been set up this last month. I think he's trying a whole different bunch of line combinations to see where he can use guys and in what situations. I'm kind of thinking now, obviously, this has been on purpose. I think really he has been trying to figure out, how to structure this, just because they have been juggled a fair amount. And dang, I know the Gagne thing just happened. Now that you bring up the lineup, I just saw it before we got on here, and don't love it. I figured you guys might ask me about that, so I can roll off that if you want.
That was going to be my question.
There you go.
There you go. What do you think?
I don't like it. It tells me that something's coming here. Like, something has to be coming. I'm not really sure. It just seems a little random for that. I think he's such a big part of this team and this goal that they have in mind. I think he's a huge part of it. And I understand he's getting older. His game has, gone down a little bit, but I just think he's such a huge part of this team. Everybody has a role, right? And you look at guys like Derek Ryan and Connor Brown, and I don't know if a situation was one of those guys had to be waived instead, but it's just been clear from almost day one since Knobs got here that Sammy hasn't really been one of his guys. And I've been in that position before with a coach where you just don't vibe with them. It's just for one reason or another, you don't really work out in his mind in the lineup. And I kind of sensed that with Sam, that he was, a healthy scratch for a decent amount there in a row. And I actually think he's played some pretty good hockey. It is not easy, I will say this, from the player side, to come in and out of the lineup, no matter what age you are, no matter how good you are at hockey. To go in and out of the lineup as a healthy scratch is not a fun or easy thing to do. You're constantly thinking about every single play you make, every game you get in there. You're gripping the stick a little tighter. Is this going to be my last shift? If I don't have a good period here, am I going to be healthy scratch the next game? It starts to really get in your head, and it's not easy to build games up in a row. But I just think Sam's such a big part of this team. Everybody plays a role, and sometimes that role can even be off the ice. I know that's not what people exactly want to hear is, let's keep him because he's just a great locker room guy. But I know how much these guys love him. And I think he's still giving you some pretty good minutes on the ice and can be a valuable depth guy down the line here. Might be playing the long game though. So I'm not really sure what's happening here.
A few years ago, we saw Spezza kind of go through this and then just come out and be like, don't claim me, otherwise I'm retiring. With these older guys around the league, is there maybe like a little bit of an unwritten rule of like, don't claim him because he just let him be where he is kind of thing? You know what I mean?
It's a great question. And I was thinking about that too, is that this also gives the other 31 teams the ability to pick him up. I mean, I don't know if it would happen. I think there's a lot of arguments that could be made for a lot of teams that are looking for a guy like this, but no, I don't think there's any rule whatsoever. This is the NHL. It is about as cutthroat as it gets. And I don't think there's anything stopping anyone from claiming Sam. And it's something to think about for sure. And it's something they would have had to talk about before doing this, is they know the repercussions of what can happen. So I don't see there being any teams saying, let's not do this just because he is an older vet, or if they put a memo out to the league saying, do not claim this guy, because it's definitely a possibility. And I really hope he passes through and stays here.
Me too.
Just sticking with the lineup conversation, because we're getting a little bit of stuff here in the chat from people kind of agreeing with you that the way Knobloch's handled these lines maybe hasn't been the best as of late. The one big decision is obviously teaming up McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman. It's not even like they're splitting up Hyman to try build some sort of secondary scoring. I have long been in the camp that long term, this team is better when McDavid and Draisaitl are separate, and you have two lines that on any given night can go out and kill the opposition and take over a hockey game. Granted, they've now won 4 games in a row with McDavid and Draisaitl together, but it's because that line's doing all the scoring. Where you come out on the idea of going nuclear as much as Knobloch has been as of late, and basically creating a top line and then what I would describe as almost a bottom 9?
First and foremost, I love the expression going nuclear when you put those 3 together. It's just the ultimate forward line. I don't mind it in short spurts. I think the last 5 games, they have 11 goals as a line, and you can see the elevation in Hyman's play. I know he's there most of the time. This conversation is more so about putting Leon and Connor together. But if they're rolling like they are, just let them be. Keep them there for a while. You know, it's good for their individual games too, to have them roll and to have them feeling really good. You'd rather split them up in hopes of them finding some offense if they weren't scoring. But if they're scoring in waves like this, you might as well just keep them together for now. Also, I think this is a lot easier to do at home. You can keep them together at home when you have last change and you're able to send that line out there against whoever you want, where when you're on the road, let's say they go to Boston tonight, I kind of like them more apart, because then it forces Jim Montgomery and the Bruins to have to play lines against McDavid and Draisaitl. It's not something that's sustainable long-term, I don't think. It's more of a short-term solution. Just long-term, I would love them to play apart, but man, what a card to have in your hand to be able to just stack this back together whenever you want. Keep them together for now, though. Let them roll. Let them feel good. Let them score some goals. And when you feel the need to, play them separately.
Just going around the league a little bit, you obviously work a ton of panels for Sportsnet. We got big news yesterday that the New Jersey Devils fired Lindy Ruff very late in the season. We're past the 2/3 mark or whatever of the year, and they make this change. Too little, too late in Jersey, or do you think there's a chance that the new coach bump helps them out a little bit?
Might be too late for the Devs, guys. I think they should have pulled the trigger on a goalie long ago. I think they probably should have pulled the trigger on firing Lindy long ago. They're 7 out of the Metro, I think, behind Philly, 8 out of Wild Card 2. That is a lot of ground to gain, but you still have close to 20 games here. I don't know if you saw the clip. I found it on X somewhere. In the Kings game on Sunday, they pulled to 6-on-5, and they didn't even have 6 guys on the ice. And Jack Hughes goes to regroup the puck and looks back at the bench to call for one more guy. And I think that was just like the final straw there. If I was a GM sitting in the stands watching my star player call for one more, it's a little bit about player management, but I think it was time for Lindy to go anyway. The guys have to respond in some way, but it might just be too late for the Devs here. But you never know. We'll see what happens. This week could be crazy. I look at a guy, I know they talked about Jacob Markstrom, but I'd look at a guy like John Gibson too. Like Lucas Dostal is ready in Anaheim. He is the next goalie, the goalie of the future for the Ducks. And I would think that that makes Gibson expendable. And I don't know what the Devs are doing. I don't know why they haven't traded for a goalie already. It is apparent that Nico Dawes and Akira Schmidt aren't the guys. And I kind of want to see the Devs take a run here. It would make for a pretty exciting backstretch here, but it might be too little too late.
Last one from me. Obviously, Matthew Rempe has just been going absolutely nuts on the league since he came in. But I don't want to ask you about like his fighting, but like, how does he get away from not fighting every single night? It seems like every time someone asks him, he just says yes. Like, do you think like he obviously can't sustain this for the rest of the season?
You want to hear the honest answer? He keeps fighting more. You'll end up fighting less by fighting more right now. It's the same thing I did when I came into the league. I made a challenge to myself when I got picked up by Edmonton. Dallas Eakins pulled me aside and said, obviously picking you up on waivers, we have you for 30 days. This is a bit of a test for you. It's a challenge for you. We get to see what we have in you and what kind of player you are. And so I made the challenge to myself that I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't going back to the American League. I was tired of playing in the minors. So I said to myself, I'm going to fight every single heavy on every team that we play from game one till whatever game it is, until A, they tell me to go get an apartment and I get to get out of the hotel, or B, no one will fight me anymore. And both things happened about a month and a half in. And I still found fights after that and still got asked to go, but it wasn't every game. I went on an absolute tear early where it was every guy I could get my hands on. And I'm not talking, I wasn't going after the middleweights. I was going after the heavyweights, just like he was. And whether they asked him or he asked them, it was never no for me. No was not in my vocabulary. And it took a bit of time. And I understand we're in March here, but this will bleed over to next year. It'll take some time, but give it a month, call it a month. If he continues to at least win fights or tie fights, no one's going to want to fight him. And you're not going to play those top tough guys too much. There's a span with every guy's, call them a fight. I hate the word fighter, fighters' careers. That happens when they first break into the league, is like, let's see what this kid's made of. But after a while, it's just like, I don't want to go this guy. This guy's a savage. Like, you're lining up to play him the next game. You're like, this guy's fought Revo and all these guys. Like, I don't want to fight him. So I think for him, it's not sustainable, but I understand what he's doing right now. Early in your career, you got to create some space for yourself and kind of give people that mentality where it's like, this kid will go anybody, anytime. And he'll get to start to pick his spots here, which is the best thing. He'll get to start turning guys down, but early in his fighting career, I don't mind what he's doing right now. More will end up being less.
So you mentioned you were going to do it until you got told to get the apartment, or until guys started saying no. Both things happened. Do you remember the first kind of like heavyweight guy who was like, "No, I'm not going with you"? What was the moment where you're like, "Hey, I think I did it"?
Good question. And I don't know if this will exactly answer it, because the guy wasn't like a super heavy, tough guy. But the first name that comes to mind is BJ Crombeen. And BJ Crombeen was a big, strong, tough guy, was playing for Arizona at the time. And no, he wasn't an elite, like heavy, tough guy, but would fight pretty much anybody, anytime. And I remember we had them at home and I gave him a slash and I was like, hey, you want to go? And he looked at me and he was just like, are you kidding me? Like, absolutely not. And I was like, this guy's like 6'4", like 230, like probably the same height and weight as me. And I have a guy looking at me going like, you crazy? Like, there's absolutely no way. So it became more guys like that, where it was like, I think I ended up fighting Beaner anyway that night, because he went after someone. He went after my line mate, Ryan Jones, or someone like that. But yeah, it got to the point where it wasn't like the super heavies that were exactly turning me down, but it was like really big, strong, tough guys that would fight, that were like, there's no way I'm scrapping you. Sorry, buddy. So it did take a little bit.
All right.
Nice feeling.
I'm wrapping up with this one from Mainlander Tim. Luke is inspiring. I'm going to fight the biggest person on the floor of this office building to exert dominance. If it works in the NHL, it will work in your corporate job as well. Luke, always appreciate the stories and the insight, man. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, anytime, guys. Go Oil.
What's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.